The crystalline spires of New Shanghai pierced the night sky like frozen lightning, their surfaces reflecting the pale blue glow of the quantum barriers that protected Earth's last megacity. Commander Vera of the Zelaxian Strike Force moved through the shadows of the lower districts, her iridescent scales shifting to match the darkness around her. The neural implant at the base of her skull hummed softly, feeding tactical data directly into her consciousness. This was supposed to be a simple infiltration mission. Get in, retrieve the quantum encryption codes, get out. But something felt wrong. The human defenses had been too easy to bypass, the security patterns too predictable. After centuries of war with the Zelaxians, humans weren't known for being careless. Vira's secondary heart began to race, a biological warning system evolved over millennia of hunting and being hunted. Her serpentine tail, typically her greatest asset in close-quarter combat, twitched with nervous energy. The humans were up to something. A flash of movement caught her attention. Through the augmented vision provided by her implant, she detected a heat signature moving with practiced precision through the adjacent building. Not the clumsy movements of a civilian, nor the rigid patterns of a security drone. This was someone who knew how to hunt. She pressed herself against the cold metal wall, her scales perfectly mimicking its surface. The figure emerged from the shadows, a human male, tall and athletic, wearing what appeared to be standard military gear. But something was different about him. He moved with an almost predatory grace, his movements resembling those of her own species more than his own. The human paused, his head tilting slightly as if sensing something. Vera held her breath, though she knew her adaptive camouflage made her virtually invisible. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. "I know you're there," he said softly, his voice carrying an unusual warmth. "You can drop the camouflage. If I wanted to trigger the alarm, I would have done it already." Vira's mind raced through her options. Her mission protocols were clear. Eliminate any human who discovered her presence. But this human's behavior defied everything she'd been taught about their species. They were supposed to be aggressive, unthinking creatures driven by fear and hatred of her kind. "My name is Jake," he continued, slowly removing his tactical helmet to reveal features that Vera found strangely compelling. "And I think we're both here for the same thing." Vira's scales rippled with uncertainty before she made her decision. She allowed her camouflage to fade, revealing her true form, 7 feet of lethal grace, her scales shimmering with subtle patterns of blue and silver. "If you know what I am, you know I can kill you before you even reach for your weapon." Jake's smile didn't waver. "I know. Just like I know the encryption codes you're after are fake, and this entire facility is a trap. The question is, do you want to know why?" For the first time in her life, Vera felt something beyond the simple imperatives of her military programming. Curiosity, interest, and something else she couldn't quite identify. Her neural implant was screaming warnings about elevated hormone levels and irregular heart patterns. "Talk," she commanded, her voice carrying a hint of uncertainty that surprised even her. "But know that if this is deception, your death will not be quick." Jake took a step closer, either brave or foolish. "The war between our species, it's built on lies. I can prove it. But we don't have much time." He extended his hand, a gesture that seemed both foreign and strangely intimate to Vera. "Trust goes both ways, Commander. Are you willing to take a risk that could change everything?" The distant sound of security drones echoed through the building. Soon, the entire facility would be swarming with human forces. Vera knew she should kill this human and complete her mission, even if it was a trap. That's what a proper Zelaxian warrior would do. Instead, She found herself reaching out, her scaled hand meeting his human one. The contact sent an unexpected shiver through her body, and her neural implant registered a surge of unfamiliar biochemical responses. "Show me," she said, making a decision that would alter not only her fate, but the future of both their species. The security drones were getting closer. Jake's hand tightened around hers. "Run with me," he whispered, and for the first time in her life, Vera followed someone else's lead. They moved through New Shanghai's underground tunnels, a maze of abandoned transit systems from before the war. Jake led the way, his movements precise and calculated. Vera followed, her senses alert for any sign of pursuit. The neural implant in her skull continued sending warning signals about her elevated biological responses, which she struggled to ignore. The encryption codes weren't just fake, Jake explained as they navigated the darkness. They were bait. Both our governments want this war to continue. Do you know why the Zelaxian High Command never attempted peace negotiations? Vira's scales shifted colors slightly, reflecting her inner turmoil. Our intelligence indicated humans would never accept peace. Your species is too volatile, too prone to violence. Jake stopped at an intersection, checking a holographic map projected from his wrist device. And we were told Zelaxians were incapable of empathy, that your species saw us as nothing more than insects to be eliminated. But you're not what they said you'd be, are you, Vira? The use of her name startled her. She hadn't given it to him. How do you know who I am? Because you're not the first Zelaxian I've helped escape. Jake's eyes met hers in the darkness. There's a resistance movement on both sides. We've been gathering evidence for years. The war, it's all about control, resources, power. Both our governments benefit from keeping our species divided. They reached a sealed door, its surface covered in warning signs. Jake placed his hand on the scanner, and it slid open with a soft hiss. Inside was a small command center, filled with screens displaying data streams Vira had never seen before. "Look," Jake said, pulling out classified files. "These are the real casualty reports from both sides. The numbers don't match what either government has been reporting. And this," he brought up another screen. "These are communications between human and Zelaxian officials from before the war. They were working together, Vira, until something happened that made war more profitable than peace." Vira's tail coiled tightly around her leg, a sign of distress her species rarely displayed. Everything she'd been taught, everything she'd fought for, could it all have been based on lies? "Why should I believe you?" she asked, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. Jake stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Because you already do. You felt it the moment we met. That something wasn't right about this war, about the stories we've been told about each other." He was right. From the moment she'd seen him, something had felt different. Her training had taught her that humans were inferior beings, driven by base emotions and primitive impulses. But Jake was nothing like that. He was intelligent, calculated, and yet there was a warmth to him that both confused and attracted her. "If what you're saying is true," Vera said slowly, "then my entire life has been." "A carefully constructed lie," Jake finished. "Just like mine. But we can change that. Together." The word "together" triggered another surge of those strange biochemical responses her implant kept warning her about. She found herself moving closer to him, her scales shifting to mirror the soft blue light of the screens around them. "They'll hunt us," she warned. "Both sides. We'll be labeled as traitors." Jake's hand reached out, hesitating for a moment before gently touching her arm. The contact sent electricity through her body. Some things are worth the risk. Before she could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Jake's screens flickered with warning messages. "They've found us," he said, quickly beginning to download data to a portable device. "We need to move. There's a safe house in the old district, but getting there won't be easy." Vera's combat training kicked in, but this time it felt different. She wasn't fighting for her government anymore. She was fighting for the truth. And for something else, something new and frightening and exhilarating that was growing between her and this human who had turned her world upside down. "I know a way," she said, her tail unfurling as she prepared for action. "But you'll have to trust me completely." Jake's smile returned, warming something deep inside her. "I already do." The safe house was in the ruins of old Shanghai, where twisted metal and crumbling concrete created a labyrinth of shadows. Vera and Jake crouched behind a fallen billboard as a patrol of military drones buzzed overhead, their searchlights cutting through the darkness. "The data proves it," Jake whispered, reviewing the files they'd stolen on a secure tablet. "The first attack that started the war, it wasn't Zelaxians who destroyed the human colony on Mars. It was staged by a coalition of human and Zelaxian officials." Vira's scales darkened with anger. "Millions died in retaliation for that attack. My own clutch mates." Jake's hand found hers in the darkness. "Both our species were manipulated. The war created the perfect excuse for increased military spending, restricted freedoms, and absolute control. The quantum technology both sides are fighting over, it was jointly developed before the war." A memory surfaced in Vera's mind, something she'd seen during a high-level infiltration mission years ago. "The Crimson Protocol," she said suddenly. "I once accessed files mentioning it, but they were encrypted beyond my ability to read." "That's it exactly," Jake nodded, pulling up more data. "The Crimson Protocol was a joint research project between our species. They were close to developing something revolutionary, a way to merge human adaptability with Zelaxian biological precision. But someone decided that technology was too dangerous to share. The sound of dropships rumbled in the distance. They were getting closer. Vira's tactical training told her they needed to move, but the revelations kept her rooted in place. "Why are you showing me all this?" she asked, studying Jake's face in the dim light. "Why risk everything?" Jake moved closer, his presence sending her neural implant into another frenzy of warnings about her physiological responses. "Because from the moment I saw you, I knew you were different. You question things. You think for yourself, just like I do." An explosion rocked the ground nearby. They were running out of time. But Vera needed to know more. "Different how? I'm still Zelaxian. You're still human. We're supposed to be enemies." "Are we?" Jake's voice was soft but intense. "Then why haven't you killed me? Why do your scales change color when I'm near? Why does your heart rate increase when I touch you?" Vira's tail coiled nervously. He was right. Her body was betraying reactions she'd never experienced before. Her training had never prepared her for this. "The Crimson Protocol wasn't just about technology," Jake continued. "It proved something our governments wanted to keep hidden, that humans and Zelaxians are biologically compatible. We're not as different as they want us to believe." The implications hit Vira like a physical blow. All the strange feelings, the unexpected reactions, the way her body responded to his presence, they weren't just emotional confusion. They were biological responses that shouldn't have been possible. Another explosion, closer this time. Jake grabbed her arm. "We need to move. There's more to show you, but not here. There's a whole network of others like us, humans and Zelaxians working together in secret." Vira made her decision. She pulled Jake close, her scales shifting to a deep purple, a color of commitment in her species. "Showy everything," she said. "No more secrets between us." As they ran through the ruins, dodging searchlights and plasma bursts, Vera realized she wasn't just running from their governments anymore. She was running towards something new, something that could change everything. And the human beside her, who had shattered every belief she'd ever held about his species, was becoming more than just an ally. He was becoming her future. The Resistance hideout was hidden beneath an abandoned quantum reactor, its radiation signature masking any life signs from orbital scans. As Jake and Vera descended into the facility, they were met by something Vera never expected to see: humans and Zalaxians working side by side. In one corner, a Zalaxian engineer worked with a human scientist, their hands moving in perfect synchronization over holographic displays. Near them, a human medic was treating a wounded Zalaxian warrior, using a combination of both species' medical techniques. "Welcome to Haven," Jake said, his hands still intertwined with hers. "The only place in the galaxy where our species can exist together freely." A tall Zalaxian female approached them, her scales a peaceful shade of green. "Commander Vira," she said, switching to their native tongue. "I am Essence Speaker Nara. We've been hoping you would find your way to us." Vira's implant registered confusion. "You knew about me." "We've been watching certain individuals from both species," Nara explained, switching back to human language for Jake's benefit. "Those who show signs of being able to see beyond the propaganda. Those whose genetic markers indicate compatibility with the Crimson Protocol's discoveries." Jake squeezed Vira's hand gently. "Show her," he said to Nara. The Essence Speaker led them to a secure chamber deep within the facility. Inside, suspended in a quantum field, was a crystal unlike anything Vira had ever seen. It pulsed with both Zalaxian bioluminescence and human DNA patterns. "This is what they wanted to keep hidden," Nara said softly. "The proof that our species aren't just compatible. We're complementary. Human adaptability combined with Zalaxian precision. The potential to create something greater than either species alone." Vira's scales shifted through a rainbow of colors as she processed the implications. "The physical responses I've been experiencing are natural," Jake finished. "Our bodies know what our governments try to deny. We're meant to work together, to be together." The word hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Vira turned to face him, her tail unconsciously wrapping around his leg in an intimate gesture that would have been scandalous among her people. "The war was built on lies," she said, her voice carrying both anger and hope. "But this, what's growing between us, this is real." Jake reached up, his fingers gently tracing the patterns on her scales. The touch sent shivers through her entire body. "More real than anything I've ever known." Nara watched them with knowing eyes. "You too aren't the first," she said. "There are others like you here. Pairs who've discovered what we're truly capable of when we stop seeing each other as enemies." The facility's warning systems suddenly flared to life. On the security screens, multiple ships appeared in orbit, both human and Zalaxian vessels working together. "They found us," Nara said urgently. "They'll destroy this facility and everyone in it to keep the truth hidden." Vira looked at Jake, seeing in his eyes the same determination she felt. They'd discovered something worth fighting for, not just their growing feelings for each other, but the hope of a future where their species could live in peace. "Then we fight," Vira declared, her scales shifting to battle-ready crimson. "Not as human or Zalaxian, but together." Jake pulled her close, pressing his forehead against hers in a gesture that bridged their cultural differences. "Together," he agreed. "Always." The battle for Haven became a turning point in a centuries-old conflict. As combined forces of human and Zalaxian military struck from above, Vera and Jake led the Resistance's defense. Their movements were perfectly synchronized, her Zalaxian combat precision melding with his human adaptability in ways that seemed to defy both species' limitations. The quantum crystal they'd discovered proved to be more than just symbolic. Its energy, when properly channeled, created a shield that merged human and Zalaxian technologies in ways neither side had thought possible. As enemy forces breached the outer defenses, Vera and Jake made their way to the crystal chamber. The crystal's not just proof of compatibility. Vera realized as they worked together to activate its full potential. It's a template for evolution, a path forward for both our species. Jake's hands moved over the controls, matching her movements. That's why they're so afraid of it. It proves everything they've told us about being natural enemies is a lie. The crystal pulsed with increasing power as their combined biosignatures activated dormant protocols. Around them, the facility's quantum field began to expand, creating a barrier that neither human nor Zalaxian weapons could penetrate. Through their neural link, now stronger than ever, Vera felt Jake's emotions as if they were her own. Love, determination, hope for a future neither of them had imagined possible before meeting each other. Our scales shifted to a deep, iridescent blue, a color her species reserved for life bonding. Attention all forces. Jake broadcast on all frequencies, his voice carrying both authority and compassion. We are transmitting proof of the deception that has kept our species at war. The Crimson Protocol wasn't a weapon. It was a bridge between our peoples. Vera joined him, her voice harmonizing with his in a way that made the crystal pulse brighter. Look at what we've accomplished here in Haven. This is what we're capable of together. The war ends today, not through victory, but through truth. The data they'd stolen, combined with the crystal's evidence, streamed to every ship in orbit, every military base on both worlds, every civilian network. Centuries of lies began to unravel as both species saw the possibility of a different future. In orbit, ships from both sides began powering down their weapons. On the ground, soldiers stopped fighting as they watched humans and Zalaxians emerging from Haven together, standing united against the deception that had kept them apart. Vera turned to Jake, her scales now glowing with colors that had no name in either species' language. "What happens now?" she asked, though in her heart she already knew the answer. Jake pulled her close, their bodies fitting together in ways that defied everything they'd been taught about their differences. "Now we build something new, together. Not just you and me, but all of us. A future where we strengthen each other instead of fighting each other." The crystal's light enveloped them as they kissed, a gesture that crossed species barriers and cultural divides. Around them in Haven and beyond, others like them were stepping forward, revealing relationships and connections that had been hidden for fear of persecution. The war that had defined both their species for centuries ended not with a final battle, but with a new beginning. A dawn of understanding that started with two individuals brave enough to question everything they'd been taught about each other. As the light of Earth's sun filtered through the quantum barrier, casting rainbow patterns across Vera's scales and illuminating Jake's smile, they knew they'd have found something far more powerful than any weapon. They had found truth and love and hope for both their peoples. Together, they had become the bridge between worlds, the first of many who would help forge a new future where the words human and Zalaxian were no longer terms of division, but parts of a greater whole.